Welcome back everyone. So as most of you know by now, the Samsung Galaxy S20 was a phone that came out last year and in my opinion was one of the best phones of last year. I think it probably was the most feature-packed phone, one of the most feature-packed phones. And it's funny because this phone has been out for a little bit over a year now, but it's depreciated so much in value that it has to be one of the best priced phones that you can pick up right now in 2021. I'll find the cheapest ones of these and maybe some other phones I'd recommend throughout this year too. Links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and help support the channel at the same time. Now starting off with the front of this phone, we still have that 6.2 inch dynamic AMOLED display. And as I said before, man, this is one of the best panels Samsung has ever made. I think it's up there with like the Galaxy S21 Ultra. Obviously, it's not as big as it, but there's just something about the curved design on the sides of the display. I'm somebody who actually likes that. There is some kind of confusing things, there's some areas where it's not the best, but I like it at the end of the day. You have that hole punch display, very little bezel on the top and bottom, and I can definitely tell you that 120Hz refresh rate is still something that is still holding up extremely well. I was afraid Samsung was going to remove it with the S21. They ended up not doing that. But this is seriously a very beautiful panel. And it's one of those panels that I look back at and I'm like, man, this is such a beautiful, timeless screen for sure. And it was a pretty big difference from the S10 to the S20. Now on the bottom, USB Type-C. And on the back, that standard glass back, which doesn't look as good as the Galaxy S21 Plus or S21 Ultra. But I still think I would rather prefer this than the S21. So this back, it being glass, having wireless charging, reverse wireless charging, I think is a pretty important thing. And I think it still feels extremely good in the hand. And then you also have that triple camera setup on the top left. So I think overall, when you hold this phone in the hand, whenever you do anything with it, it's still a very premium feeling and very premium looking device. It may not be perfect, but there is still a lot going for this phone. And on top of that, you have a microSD card slot on this phone as well. Now, as I've said before, this is one of the best things about this phone, having the capability of just putting in more storage if you want to without having to go and buy some more cloud storage or whatever. It's one of my favorite things at the end of the day. And for sure, when it comes down to it, as I stated before, this is a really awesome feature that you're going to have when you have a device like this. So just that in and of itself is a humongous reason why you should probably pick up this phone over the S21, but there's probably some more features too. So in terms of the outside, that pretty much covers it up. Now hitting on the camera, like I said before, this camera has that triple camera setup on the back, a 12 megapixel wide angle lens, 64 megapixel telephoto lens, then a 12 megapixel ultra wide sensor. And as I mentioned before, this camera is extremely good for sure. This thing has, that triple camera setup, as I always mention. It's the triple camera threat. Yeah, as long as you can zoom in a lot, have that wide angle lens that's really good, and zoom out a lot, then you're pretty much set. I've done a ton of camera comparisons between this thing and a ton of other phones, and I pretty much found that this device kills it when it comes down to the camera stand-up. Now, not only can it do 4K at 60, but it can also do 8K videos, which is awesome. Like I said before, having that capability of just taking those 8K videos may seem kind of dumb and maybe too much now, but very soon, probably in the next couple years, it's going to be one of those features that's going to be like a necessity for a lot of phones. Just like how 4K, may have been kind of overkill back in 2015, but now it's kind of like, every phone has 4K. And as soon as these storage devices, end up being like 512 gigs for like, the base models, we're probably going to be getting 8K videos starting to become the norm. So that's going to be pretty crazy. I don't know what it's going to be like, but I think it's for sure going to be an awesome thing. The front camera is a 10 megapixel sensor here as well. And in this case, you can do 4K at 60 here too. And as I mentioned before, and I keep saying this is seriously a really good front camera as well. I think the iPhone 12s kind of have a better front facing camera, but I still think this one is pretty good. It seems a little glitchy here and there, but still having 4K at 60 is great. And having 8K on the back is another really awesome feature as well. So at the end of the day, I can definitely tell you the camera setup on this thing is seriously one of the best things about this phone for 100% fact. So in terms of the camera setup, that pretty much covers it up. Now hitting on probably the best, worst, medium thing about this phone. I really don't know what it is. The software definitely isn't the best thing about this phone. On one hand, it's still getting support for quite a bit of time. It's not like it's going to be outdated tomorrow. But on the other hand, it isn't stock Android. It's not Oxygen OS. I'm not really a humongous fan of, what this specific software is. But I think for some people, they may actually prefer it. I don't know anybody who actually prefers it. Maybe some people in the comment section might. But I'm more of a fan of stock Android. And I wish there was some sort of, feature with, unlocking the bootloader on this thing and then custom ROMing it. This device, as well as like the 5 other Samsung Galaxy S devices before this, don't really have that capability. But I think whenever you mess around with a device like this, with its software, you'll probably end up getting used to it. And one thing I like about One UI, especially One UI 3, is that there are a ton of features built in, and Samsung just increased the longevity of these phones for an extra year of security updates. So that's another really cool thing, and as well as another year of regular OS updates, starting with the Note 20. So I think that's another really cool thing too. If you want a phone that's still going to last you a couple more years, this is for sure one of those devices. I would probably just recommend throwing a custom launcher on here or something, but I still think for sure this is a solid phone when it comes down to the software standpoint. I'm just not really a fan of the software, but the battery life on this phone is really, really good as well. This thing has a 4,000 mAh battery, which is a massive size battery to have on this type of device. Now, like I said before, there's a ton of features, 120Hz, really high resolution display and stuff, but as I mentioned before, and I keep saying this over and over again, bigger batteries almost always give you better battery life, and this is just one of those examples. So this for sure is another big incentive of picking up a Galaxy S20 in 2021. So in terms of that, I don't know whether it's the best thing about this phone or whatever, but it's still a solid pickup for sure. Now, ending it off with the performance, I mean, dude, this device is still a killer when it comes down to it. This thing has that Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 chipset, an octa-core CPU, and only one model of this phone with 8GB of RAM. And I don't know what you guys want to hear from me, but it's still a really good performing phone. I have not found any way that this phone is, super slow or anything like that. I think maybe the only disadvantage that this phone has that really every single Galaxy S phone I've had has is pretty much the glitchiness when it comes down to the UI. I don't know what it is with it, and there's just always some random pop-ups and random stuff going on. It kind of sounds like it's a software issue, but it really hinders the performance sometimes because you may want to go and do, maybe like load up an app or do certain things or swipe between apps and stuff, but you'll just kind of get these little glitched frames that just kind of make you think that it's a slower performing phone, when in fact it may actually still be faster than a lot of phones you're comparing to, but it's just not as smooth. And that's kind of one of the bigger issues. I mean, when it comes down to lighter intensive apps, it's gonna kill it. Medium intensive apps, it's gonna kill it. Even when you go to like higher intensive gaming or video editing on this thing with super high resolutions, you're still gonna be perfectly fine. You're really not going to have a bad performing phone from this thing because it's a little bit over a year old, but you have a very good chipset inside of it, and you have solid, performance from this thing. And I think for sure from anybody watching this video, the Galaxy S20's performance, if there's one thing you're going to have to worry about this phone, it is 100% not going to be the performance. This is a solid performing phone. Anybody watching this video, I mean, I could use a Galaxy S9 and still probably be okay. This phone for sure is a solid performing phone, and with 120Hz, it makes it feel that much smoother and that much faster at the end of the day. So in terms of the performance standpoint, 100% thumbs up from me. So in terms of that covers up the performance standpoint. And to kind of sum up this video and to answer the question, should you go and buy a Samsung Galaxy S20 in 2021? Well, this is what I'll tell you, 100% yes. First of all, this phone isn't even that old. So if you're watching this video, you already know it's worth it. I mean, it's not an old phone at all. But the other question is, first of all, the screen of this thing is beautiful, 120Hz, beautiful camera. You're still getting software support for at least like a couple more years, so you're set there. And a security update, improvement there too. So that's another pretty big asset. You're getting really good battery life, reverse wireless charging, the fingerprint sensor in the display, micro SD card slot, which is huge. And there's really not that much to hate on this phone. I can't really think of anything off the bat. Maybe besides, like the glitchiness here and there, and maybe besides the back not looking that great. Other than that, I think it's a solid phone. But I think a more important question is, what other phones maybe are better values than this thing? And right off the bat, I can't really think of any phone that's like a way better phone than this. I think the Galaxy S20 is probably the phone that if you want to get the best bang for your buck in terms of Android device, this is probably the one to get. I think another phone that may be kind of comparable to this is like an iPhone 11 Pro. It definitely doesn't have that many features compared to the S20, but it's still a solid phone that's probably going to outlast the S20 in terms of software support. And that's, they're around this, the 11 Pro is a little bit more expensive, but that's really the only other phone I can think of in this category that's really comparable to this phone. So like I mentioned before, I will leave both of those phones linked down below. You You can get them from there and help support the channel at the same time. But that's really pretty much it. If you guys have any other questions or anything like that, let me know in the comment section as well. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys can hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my other channels. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.